I definitely want to go into your macro view now. I'm quite interested to see how you can try to persuade me, because I know that we talked about this actually. You said that um, you kind of listened to my, I guess, economic standpoint on what would actually help us. And now let's see if I can end your career.
Well, what's
All
wrong
good.
with the
Let's hear it.
economy
Okay.
now?
Let's hear it.
So, well, you know what I think actually, because we've talked about it before. But I want to hear your take on the big economic problem that we're facing right now.
With specifically just
So we talked about social. We talked about the two big underlying reasons for social problem and how the human factor that
Right.
we can't affect. It's part of our DNA. It's part of who we are as a species. We can't affect that.
right.
I want to go into possible solutions after, but also let's go into each little bucket first. So we talked about social. I want to talk about economic right now. What are your thoughts on economic policies, changes, things in general that are causing huge change, and just not for the better, change for the worse?
I think one of the key interesting things that I've been thinking about actually personally is this idea of growth at all costs. And that's something that is inherent to capitalist economies because, again, we need to thrive on growth or else, the system kind of doesn't really work. But this idea that the economy has to be growing or else things are going badly. So that in and of itself kind of offers a lot of very weird difficulties with this problem. So again, take the example of climate change. In order to solve climate change, we're going to need to reorder a lot of the different ways we operate economically. Now, that might require us to go through a period of not stagnation, but again, like not growth. So I feel like the idea of growth at all costs specifically is one of those interesting, like, who wrote the rule that in order for an economy to be successful, it needs to grow all the time. And I think these issues are so big, and I guess that's just one of the main issues. I mean, of course, you can go into the micro scale of like how, generally the economy doesn't really work for a lot of middle Americans and how that is driving some of the social and cultural problems as well, because they feel left out of the economy, especially in a globalized system. But, like that's just a whole nother, that's another can of worms that we can go down. But I think growth is a really interesting idea. And the idea that like, economies don't necessarily have to be growing to be successful. And that's just something that we're kind of ingrained in our like American mythology to believe that that economies have to grow at a large rate in order for us to be, successful country.
I feel like that's just fluff. I feel like politicians say that just for the sake of America must improve, but essentially that just translates to do the best that we can. It's not like
Could be
a mandatory requirement. It's like if we're not doing this, it's the end of the world. Rather, it's more to spur the people to be like, we're doing this. We're number one. We're going to keep on growing. It's like a coach to their baseball team. It's like, come on, guys, we got this. We're going to keep getting better. We're going to improve. It's like basically a political version of a pep talk, constantly saying good things, we're constantly improving, we're constantly growing. This is America, we are the best, And yeah, that could be a lie. Yeah, it's maybe nonsense. But like, is it really like bad, like to say such a thing? Like, what are you gonna say? It's like we need to go down. We need to suffer a recession. You know what I'm saying? We need to take a step back. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god.
No, I get that, and I actually agree to a certain extent. Like, of course,
I don't think they believe
cheerleading.
Sorry? I don't think they believe it like themselves. Like, at least not 100%.
Right. I guess what I'm talking about more is less like the political cheerleading and more of like the idea that if an economy isn't growing, then it's not successful in a way. I guess I'm not really getting at the idea of like the politician's perspective on it. If that makes sense. I'm more talking about the idea of like, constant growth as a prerequisite for a developed economy.
I feel like that's kind of just black and white, though. I don't think every person thinks like that.
I agree with that, Alex. Yeah. I will say, so like if we want to just look at economy very, very blunt, it's run on productivity furnished by debt. And there are debt cycles, and those debt cycles are always going to be going up or down. You know, it's like a sinusoidal graph. It's never going to be straight shooting upwards, you know? And so the idea, this capitalist ideal that we need to always strive for better, I'm also I'm a big believer in the idea of meritocracy, and that people that achieve something on their own merit or their own just like ability to do stuff well, that's what should be rewarded. But at the same time, there are times when it's necessary to take a step back. And the big problem is that a lot of these policymakers, legislators, they don't understand that there are, like, this is a controversial view, but there are recessions needed, because the way that our debt system works, the way that we lend to people, the way that the central government both buys and lends, just everything, we can't possibly be growing constantly, because inflation is going to keep going up. And when that happens, then we get screwed even more. And so to your point, I don't think we're even on a different page, because I also agree that, or I don't necessarily agree, but I'm saying that, you know, the economy itself cannot be always going up, 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 because I mean, we've seen this in history. It's just going to crash.
I think there's an interesting point here that I didn't make, and I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect. I actually feel like when I mean by is, when I say growth is more important, I actually think that it's about specific companies requiring there to be a profit in order for them to be successful.
Oh yeah, that I kind of disagree with.
Sorry, Alex, I think you cut out there. What was that?
I kind of disagree with that mentality, that like you have to, for companies specific, more like internal, not macro with the entirety of America, but like specifically with countries. I don't like that idea, because like I work at a company right now, and they're always talking about like unit cost, and they're talking about like efficiency, and they're talking all about this, and I'm just like telling them, it's like, listen, we can keep doing this over and over and over again, but eventually you're going to plateau. You can't improve all the time and keep everything the same. Something's got to give. You got to hire more people. You got to get more machines. You have to spend more money. You have to like put some loss into wanting to grow. But for them, they keep, and obviously I'm only part of one team, I don't know the whole company, but they just keep focusing on like reducing the unit costs and improving the efficiency. And I don't
have any problem with that per se. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like growth. Every company should strive to be the most efficient and provide the best product or good or service, of course. But the issue that I'm talking about is more to address the problems that this new economy will be providing us, i.e. if it's a pandemic or a, global climate change. Like, we can't, and again, those are just two examples, but there are a million examples of stuff like that. We can't expect companies to all the time pursue profits at the expense of like actually addressing some of these problems. So that's just, I guess I totally agree with you in the sense that like companies should never be, like handicapped, and like there should never be a cap on, output or growth or profits or, stuff like that, at least not to a certain extent. But I just believe that I think this mindset, it's more of like a mindset that, in order for a company to have a successful quarter, it needs to grow by X percent. To me, that just seems very wrong, especially in the world that we live in with complex problems.
Absolutely. I don't think
that's crazy to me. Because it actually is like, it's literally the only measure of success nowadays. Like, for instance, Tesla. The big thing with Tesla was, are they going to make the S&P 500? And the reason was they had a bunch of deliverables they had to meet. I think one of them was have profit for 4 quarters straight. Yeah. The other was being above a certain threshold in valuation. There's a bunch of stuff. I could rattle down the list. And, one of those things, like I said, having profit first for an extended period of time, that's for a company that I personally really like, for reasons that we won't have to go into because Alex is gonna hamstring me.
About what?
Tesla. Tesla.
You want to mention his name, Pete?
No. That whole idea is just it's a little weird. It's a little funky.
But
you
that
can
has
have
impacts
that.
too.
And the crazy part is that when people are going to invest in a company like that and they don't understand and they're just following the hype and they don't get why they're doing it, it's like you're just kind of following a sheep. You're a pack animal now.
Yeah.
You're sheep, and I'm telling the people right now, don't be sheep.
But that has real impacts too. I mean, like
Yeah.
Pete didn't even mention the fact that like if Tesla wants to create a profit in times like these, they have to lay off, many workers. Same thing with like airlines, for example. They're trying desperately to maintain, good balance sheets in a time when maintaining good balance sheets means laying off half their workers. And again, like, these are exceptional times. So obviously these are, shouldn't be taken at face value to a normal economy. But that idea of maintaining profits, even at the expense of the general well-being of either their employees or the world at the world as a whole, I think is just not a productive way to look at anything.
People are selfish.
Yes. Yes.